Wow, where do I start after that introduction there on the Festival of the Unexplained.com? Get onto that and come and meet some amazing people. Talking about amazing people, welcome along to the Open Mic Hour, an amazing Thursday as usual. And what can I say about my next guest? I just feel rather humbled and honoured to have the amazing Bishop Cloud with me tonight, and well over 30 years experience. So let's bring this young man into the studio. Good evening, young man, and thank you for joining me. Thank you for your time.
Oh, you're welcome. I'm happy to join you.
Oh wow, just again, as we had a little chat in the backstage prior to the live, I touched on last week. I touched on a few things over the hour show last week with attachments, and then that led to some possessions, and then that led to some exorcisms and stuff like that as well. So I'm just trying to give some people the insights to certain stages along how spirits or energies and entities can affect people, and leads from everything from your shift shapers and everything, trying to overpower you and being quite suppressive and taking you into their state of mind as well. But welcome to the show. Please tell me more about yourself.
Well, you mentioned I have about 30 years of experience being an exorcist and in deliverance ministry. I'm the superior for the Advent Catholic Church's Order of Exorcists. So I have an exorcist and a couple demonologists that basically work for me. And, we've been on quite a few cases together. I've done quite a few cases over the years, 30 years, and then you multiply that by however many cases I've had, and you got a pretty sizable number. I've always felt like this is the path that was destined for me, because I've had the sight ever since I was 4, and that actually started from a paranormal event, but of a different flavor. But and the things that God has blessed me with within the sight, most folks not in the Christian community would see it as a psychometry, post-cognition, clairvoyance, clairaudience, that kind of stuff. And it serves great when I'm on a case or in a haunting, because I can actually see, interact, hear with a lot of these entities.
Certainly as well, prior to that, and I know with the 30 years experience, do you find at present moment the situation that everyone's coming out of, that I feel at the minute that certain energies are trying to hold on to this type of scenario, and I feel a lot is feeling quite stagnated, where a lot of people are struggling to move on and getting back into the swing of things, and we are just kicking back up here in the UK. And I've noticed, like on certain situations where I feel it's been anchored, and these energies and entities over the last 12-18 months have really enjoyed a lot what's been going on. And I have noticed a lot more people being sensitive around their own environments. Do you find that people are getting in contact with you more, that they're sensing as well with the period that we've just gone through?
Yeah, there's nothing more that an evil spirit loves than to isolate people, because then it can work on your mind. And that's one of the part of the stage of oppression, which is basically the secondary stage, leading into, God forbid, possession, imperfect and perfect. But the isolation piece, I think, has worked on a lot of people, that feeling of being disconnected from their natural supports that they have in their life, family, friends, whatever, churches, just having that isolation, I think, is something that any of these type of entities would want to capitalize on. Yeah. And increase,
Also as well, take me back to when it all started as well with yourself. There's a lot of sensuous side to yourself as well. And where did it really start to open up for you?
For me, so in order to talk about me, I have to go into my extended family line through my mom, her mom, my dad's mom, going back on that line as well. They've all had the sight to some degree. My dad, he didn't have it, but on both lines have seen a lot of things over the years. I mean, my dad's mother, she was walking along a river one day, and she saw a casket rise out of the river. You know, this was a vision, and she saw her father in the casket when it opened, the coffin. And she ran home and told her mom about it, my great grandmother. And my great grandmother told her to not say anything to her dad because that would mean that he would die. 3 days later, he passed away from just suddenly. It was an unexpected death. And then my mother's mom, my grandmother on that side, when she was 3 years old, or 4 years old, I think it was, she was laying in bed with my great grandmother, and a shadow entity was basically choking her out. And my great grandmother was able to actually grapple this thing, and she said it was more like a spongy type feel, but she was able to grapple it and throw it against the far wall. And when it hit the far wall, it let out a shriek and then sunk down into the floorboards. And so, I mean, those are two pretty wild stories just from the extended line.
I mean, certainly the seeing a casket in that scenario as well, it's like it's quite a big impact as well, even 2 or 3 days later to try and tie things in. It is a lot for the normal folk out there to understand what sensitives or mediums or people in and around that's got a certain gift have to deal with as well. And sometimes it can take a lot of stresses and strains as well. So hopefully she dealt with that scenario, and again, it can be really overpowering sometimes as well, can't it?
Oh, very much so. My mom's mother, my grandmother on that side, she didn't want to talk about too many of her experiences because they were so scary for her and so unnerving. And but you know, that was the kind of stories I used to hear around, you know, family get-togethers, Thanksgiving or Christmas or something like that. And then you have my mom, who's experienced tons and tons of things of the supernatural or paranormal in her life. And then, you know, fast forward to little old me at 4, the paranormal piece that really was the catalyst for me. And like I said, it's a paranormal episode, event, whatever you want to call it, but it was a UFO abduction. And so for me, that was kind of the beginning of seeing shadow people, walking into places and feeling different things, seeing different apparitions and whatnot, hearing different things. And it just cascaded throughout my life. And so my life is part of the paranormal.
It's an amazing universe, as I always try and explain out there, because I do a lot of I'm a Reiki master and healing and that, and I'm always trying to help everybody as well. And sometimes you've got to keep the divine line right down the middle, and you know, where you've got to put your perspective on it and the situation, and then be down the middle of what help and support as well. Do you find, going back from the early days where you got involved with the church and that, the Anglican Church, and the side of it where there was, as people been like sending photographs or documenting what was going on in and around there, where they would have first started asking you for help around that scenario and situation? With, obviously we didn't have the internet or, you know, like Messenger or screenshots and all that type of thing. So back in the early on days, it was like, I always say, being pushed in the right direction for the right people to help you and word of mouth. So I presume that would have started in that type of situation. Yeah,
you know, I started my work as an exorcist helping my dad in deliverance ministry, because he was a Pentecostal minister, and he was called out fairly often to, you know, help folks with things in their home, or they were being oppressed, or whatnot. Like for one instance, for him, when we went out, it was a man and a wife. They'd been having marital problems. All of a sudden, they were getting along just fine, and then they started fighting like cats and dogs. And they were part of the church, and they wanted my dad to come out and pray through the home and see what he could do. So we went there, and my dad went through each room, prayed through, opened up all the closets and everything. But as he got finally to the last room, the master bedroom, he opened up just about as he was to open up the closet in the master bedroom, it blew open and knocked him backwards. And then it went throughout the room and knocked all of the pictures off the wall and then shot out the front door. So
it's certainly a lot of strength around these energies and entities as well, isn't it? And again, understanding that scenario situation, and obviously we do bring a lot of trying to bless and balance and cleanse, don't we? You know, do you know what I mean? It's always, how do you find, do you have a certain routine now that you stick to, and certain levels that you automatically know a few days prior to going somewhere? Do you get that gut instinct that you know that it's building, or it's trying to get your attention even stronger, even from hundreds of miles away?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I get what's called scouting, what I call scouting parties. So for me, a few days before an exorcism of a home or a person or a property, I'll get what I call scouting parties, and I'll wake up in the night, or I'll see them at night, 2 to 3 shadow people on average. And I have photos where I've been scratched from my wrist down to my elbow in the 3 scratches. And they, you know, they're so rude. They usually get me when I'm taking a shower. I'll be just mind my own business, taking a shower. My arm starts to burn. I look down, and it's like their little, you know, petty threat saying, you know, don't come here, don't mess with us, that kind of thing. And for me, because I'm so immersed in you know, addressing these things, for me, I just look down and go, really? That the best you got? And go and do what I need to do and help folks and get it done. But you definitely know something's coming down the pipe.
It certainly has a way, you know. Obviously, I try and work around Archangel Michael, and I try and bring my support in. I do trust my guide, I trust my team, and it's having that understanding as well with the strength of, you know, the support that we have around us working in the white light. And again, and, you know, I mean, there must be situations there where you started with the exorcisms and possessions and that it's been, I did see, I think I ended the show last week where I mentioned one person went through 14 days to complete an exorcism. So we would have had to have other ministers coming in and bishops and part of the team. It just doesn't happen overnight type of thing, or it can take 6 hours, 5 hours, a day or two. So do you find that, have you ever had a scenario where you feel that even when you've done an exorcism that like one's popped out and something's popped in, or there's a combined strength there of their team, unfortunately? What could you explain to the viewers on a scenario that you've come across where it's been really, really tough down to the limit?
Yeah. So a lot of the exorcisms that I do, I go in and it's over. You know, there's no more problems unless people are continuing to open doors in their life or whatnot for these things. But there are times that I have to go back multiple times, sometimes 3-4 times to get these things out, because there's and that's part of the investigative piece, is to figure out the why behind a haunting or a possession or oppression. And there's always an answer. You just have to dig deep enough and be patient enough and diligent enough to find that answer.
And it's certainly as well where you can have, I find we're like a little bit of a detective as well, where we have to uncover certain layers, and we have to really, I find, go beyond and look to prior to what's happened to a certain scenario in and around a couple or a person while they're experiencing that. And you've got to really break the layers down and start from scratch, haven't you? You've got to really go take me back to when it was settled and then give me the situation as it's built up as well. So again, sometimes it can be it can be a lot of work prior to that, even starting something, of the help and the support around a possession or an exorcism as well. So it's just, I'm just thankful for the team that's around us.
Yep, absolutely. You know, when I go out on an exorcism, I usually take 2 or 3 others that have experience, basically just praying, you know, just being that spiritual support. And, you know, I have a role to play as the exorcist, but I can't do it alone without the prayers and support of the others.
Most definitely as well. And again, I always try and find, like, the praying, we virtually can do that within our own mind, and the team will pick up on that as well. So you don't have to virtually say it out loud. You can say it and throw it out there as well, with trying to get your team to support and get that person to get regrounded and rebalanced and cleansed as well, and shake that energy and entity off as well.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, like when I go out on an exorcism, I usually do a fast for 2 or 3 days prior to that. That way, you know, my spiritual self is in prime fighting condition, while my physical self is kind of, you know, weak, pushed aside a little bit, so that I'm not getting in the way of what God wants to accomplish. And so, and because honestly, it's never been about me. It's always about him. And, you know, I'm happy to step out of the way and just let him do his thing.
Well, again, I think that is the amazing trust that we have as well, isn't it? It is an amazing bond, connection, link, strength. And it's just like, I mean, I had a good friend that said to me, you rely on your team too much. And I'm like, well, you know, I'm happy to do that because I know the strength of my team, and try and get the supportiveness there, that it's like, not bring it on, but, you know, I'm happy to help people in directions. And it's, you've got to have the inner strength, as you said, you've got to have that inner strength.
Yeah, absolutely. You can't go into it willy-nilly. And you have to prepare yourself. You have to understand that these things could hurt you. They could do a lot of things. You know, I've seen these things ruin a person financially, ruin their health, I mean, one of my demonologists, he went on a case and he was warned that a package had been delivered by a friend of his, that she's a medium. And he was like, what do you mean a package been delivered? And so he was like, well, I still need to do this, so I'm going out. Well, the man had been previously healthy, and his heart gave out. He had to have a heart transplant. He had to go through all of that. He died several times while they were doing the heart transplant. And, you know, people need to understand, you don't just do it.
Yeah.
Just out of curiosity and see, hey, let's, you know, get some popcorn and see what can happen. I mean, because things will happen, and usually not good things. So you have to be prepared. You have to, as I like to tell folks, be prayed up and be ready for whatever might come.
The lovely Jolene's just joined us as well, and thank you for everybody else that's in the chat room as well. Please feel free to ask any questions, and we'll bring them on screen as well. But thank you for everyone joining us. Also as well, how have you found the different areas of the United States from different counties? Do you feel certain energies of the land are totally different, or are some more suppressive than other areas?
Well, one more.
Oh. Right, okay. We will try and get, nice to see James again. It certainly is. And then it's funny how he just popped out there again on these questions, and Spirit's always got this way of interacting with the internet and our connections as well. So we will get the lovely Bishop Cloud back on as well. I think he's back in now. Here we go. Good.
My phone. So I will tell you one thing. Whenever I do interviews on the radio, on video, something always happens. Always. And my phone just decided to go on a crazy bender here. So sorry about that.
Hey, that's fine. That's live. It is what it is, isn't it?
Yeah.
Lovely Jolene says, nice to see you again, James.
Glad to be back.
Yeah, I'll do a recap on the last question before you popped out there. It's just like, how do you find different states going through the United States of America? Do you find you get more drawn to more positivity states and more like suppose suppressive states? You know, if a town or a city is really struggling, like what's the name I was after? You know, like General Motors, where all that is. That's really gone through a big.
Oh, okay.
And there's been a lot in Detroit. Took from like the richest city in the world. I would have thought right up there, but now I think I've seen a lot of deprivation and people struggling there as well. So,
sure.
How have you found certain situations like that around America? Or
yeah, absolutely. You know, because from my perspective, these evil spirits, you know, they're predators. You know, they look for something that's already. Or a person that's already struggling or whatnot, and they pounce on them, you know, like a murderer, a rapist, or whatever. They're predators, and there's nothing redeemable in these guys. And so I always liken it to a lion on the Serengeti. You know, they're not going to get the prize oxen out on the Serengeti. They're going to find the ones that are young, or they're physically ill, or they're old. And whatever's the easiest mark, that's what they're going to go for. And that's what I find a lot across the board.
And there is a lot of vulnerable people out there as well. And I think I touched on last week where it was like 100,000 people have been affected or needed help, say, in the last 12 months, even over in the UK. Millions of people are affected and don't really understand what's going on in and around them with their emotions or attachments or possessions. And again, the inner side of it can physically change their lifestyle and what they're going through. And then all of a sudden, it'll show itself at a certain wrong time, I would say, but it will show itself as really not the right time, the right place. And I always find that happens when either you're tired or your team around you are preoccupied and got loads on. And I always say stretch to the limit or the maximum, and then all of a sudden, will let you know what's going on.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, they'll capitalize on any opportunity. I'll just put it that way, to fight back or to make a person's life miserable.
How would you say as well that how would you explain like some of your, I would say, wouldn't say famous cases, but some that really stand out for you, that's really you feel so proud to have just helped somebody, I would say, change their lives and put them back on the road and put them back on the path?
Yeah, I've had, goodness, quite a few of those. You know, a few that stand out to me were the most active ones. One was a case where I was called out to go to a property. The family had been physically attacked by entities. There was a poltergeist also in the home that was, I mean, moving things around, opening, you know, the typical haunting kind of stuff, the cupboards, the doors and all that, but also a couple of shadow people. One was the Hat Man, that's pretty seen fairly often, that would attack the children. And, you know, and these are kids under the age of 8. And it was just a really sad situation. And this thing had followed them, or at least they know of one that had followed them, the Hat Man. But then they moved into a new property that was, you know, after we did historical research and other things, we found out it was old train stop from the west coast of the United States through the state of Oregon. And around there, they'd had the Indian Wars. The property that they were on no longer had the buildings, but there was a brothel there. There was taverns and inns. There was hotels, but it was also like the lynching spot, where if they didn't like you, they'd string you up by the neck on a big tree that was on their property. And there was some Native American things going on as well. And so went through, got it cleaned up for them. The story could take an hour in itself, but it ended well. Several hundred spirits were ejected out of the property, and the family was able to find closure and healing. So,
I know in the time in the past where we've been to like trying to help some trapped spirits and been to some asylums, and some people say, well, I've helped trying to cross over, and you feel like the gateway has been opened and with the way of work and helping the team. And it's like, there must have been 4,000 spirits and energies that's gone to the white light and feel settled, that the land can change and settle down again. And places do call you, and you've got to do certain amounts of work there to help balance and cleanse as well. Is there anywhere in specific at the moment that you feel is drawing your attention, or any certain buildings local, or is there anything that you're drawn to at the minute?
Well, I live right on the edge of the Standing Rock Indian Reservation here in South Dakota. And there's a lot of darkness on the reservation itself. And there's a lot of things that I feel, when you go through certain places, you feel that oppressive, that heavy feeling. Sometimes I get a sense of what's going on, and sometimes I don't. It's just the heaviness. But yeah, and it's hard to find a place, or a state, I should say, that doesn't have some oppressive areas, or like little centers, if you will, of this dark activity. And I guarantee you, these guys have the best communication system going, because they know days ahead that you're coming, even if, and you could be states away and they'll still know you're coming, and they'll come visit.
Yeah, and I always find, as you said there, where you've got the positivity, you've got the negativity as you're drifting and traveling through as well. I always ask people if they feel in a situation like that where they feel it's a bit weighted or suppressive. I always say, wrap your angel wings around you and, bring yourself in tight, and just try and shrink your aura so you're not attracting or being wide open with energy, your own energy, and sending off too much of your battery pack to try and attract a different weighted or energy as well. So sometimes it's hard to try and explain when, somebody's just walking through a town or a city, or even at a bus stop or waiting up for a train. It's like, if you feel uncomfortable, wrap yourself up, protect yourself, look after your aura, because you don't want the kitchen sink all the time, do you, with any attachments or negativity.
Yeah, no, and there's a lot of times when I'm going through some of those places that I have to basically shut off my sight, just so I'm not physically affected by it, because I'm also empathic too, and so I'll feel the emotions that is in the area, and I don't like that, and so I just, I've learned over the years to be able to basically put that on mute, the mute button. And once I'm clear of the area, then I can flip it back on if I choose. But most of the time, honestly, I just leave the mute button on unless I'm on a case. Yeah. Because I don't want to feel anything and everything everywhere.
And again, sometimes people can be effective and have, like, as we touched on before, where you can have a bad luck and run, or inexplainably different things going on that's like totally different swing around their character, and you're thinking, sometimes it's like, I always get the signs of going, aye, something needs just watching out for what that current family or couple or somebody's going through as well. And again, it's working, and I always send like loads of love and white light, and I always try and wrap their house up or protect them with the golden bubble, and really overpower it. So a lot of weighted energies will repel the other way because it's like there's too much white light. So you try and throw back as much white light as you can and stuff like that. Or just, have you had people where you've seen the signs prior to it and then all of a sudden it's just hit them out the blue?
Oh, absolutely. You know, there's been cases I've been called to. I go out thinking, well, this will only need a minor exorcism. You know, I'll just do a house blessing and pray through it, and, you know, it won't be that big of a deal. I get out there and it's literally a 3-ring circus. You know, it's so oppressive. It's so active. And then other times I'll get calls that they're saying, oh, you know, it's hitting the fan, guys. You know, this life is going down the toilet. And so I get out there, my senses aren't going off. Everything seems like it's moderately okay.
Yeah.
Other than maybe some relationship issues going on.
Do you find it? Sorry. Do you find it as well with like your I always call it your spidey senses? You know, you know, your cackles go up on the back of your neck, and stuff like that. All the hairs raise up, so you know the atmosphere has changed as well, don't you?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, you know, it's unmistakable. I remember one time I was called to go to this lady's house, and she said her son was acting really odd, and the house, you know, was typical poltergeisty, haunting kind of thing. And I get out there and come to find out the poor kid was on the verge of possession. So yeah, he was acting weird because he wasn't himself by any stretch of the imagination, and he didn't have any underlying mental health issues. So, but see, that's another piece about myself too. I'm also a qualified mental health professional, as well as the highest certification for drug and alcohol counseling. So I can look at mental health, substance use, you know, and do the full assessments to say, oh, is this legit, or is this, you know, something else going on that I can refer out? But for this case, no, it was full bore craziness. When I went down into the basement of the home, there was this, I had, you know, it got so oppressive. I was looking around because I knew I was going to see a shadow person for sure. I look off to my left, and there's this shadow person basically in the shape of those Russian stackable dolls. It had that almost like bowling pin shape, kind of that smaller head, but this bulbous body. And it's just, you know, going back and forth like this, looking at me. And all of a sudden it just went right in and through me. And I tell you what, that made every hair just, you know, go up. I mean, the cold sensation, you could feel it in your skin, then into your bones, then as it went out the back, you know, through that skin. I tell you what, if I was any less of a person, I would have hightailed it out of there in 3 seconds.
I mean, I was on an investigation a few weeks back, and I was in a workhouse, children's workhouse, and basically the master there, the person in charge, virtually the first night, who'd done 2 nights there, and it virtually, I think it walked through the doorway or dropped down right in front of me. As I walked through it, it was like, I'll try and drain you. I'll try and drain you. And I was like, right, okay. So I had to take myself out of the situation, talk to my team. What just went on there? Did he just do what I thought he did? Yeah. So again, protection as well. But that scenario, it can give you the big wallop of virtually draining your batteries, can't it?
Oh my goodness. There have been several exorcism cases I've been on that, you know, I'm literally sleeping for 2 or 3 days afterwards. While I'm on a case, I'll typically sweat buckets. I mean, the physical exertion of going into one-on-one combat with these guys, it's tough. You know, it does make you physically exhausted. And usually I need to hit my masseuse at some point after that, just to get all that excess energy and tension out of my body.
The other thing as well is when I try and explain to people, it can be, have you had scenarios where it's got personal with certain family names, or I've walked into a room where 5 people have been holding a good friend down that left the portal open for about a year and a half and told the family that they weren't doing a board, but they were doing it around the coffee table with letters. Yeah. And even prior to getting there, the sat nav was circling and it wouldn't let me go. So I had to turn the whole car off, turn everything off prior to going there. And even as soon as I made the reconnection, phoned them back, I said, you need to close the portal down straight away because it's been left open. Oh, there's no portal here. Oh, there was. And the person had been doing a board unbeknown to their parents for like 18 months and left it open and open and open. Next door neighbours had been arguing and arguing and arguing, which was actually feeding the portal. And it was like, sure. When I walked in, it just went, hello, Mr. Fields, I've been waiting for you. But the gentleman's eyes were rolling at the back of the head, a young lad, his eyes were rolling at the back of the head. And the scenario is where that is a big, to step into that room and then that does that, it's like, right, okay, we know what we've got to do. We know what we're up against. And to see it, you can't explain what it's like to actually see somebody going through that situation.
Yeah, you know, you'd have to experience that. You could use any type of adjective to describe it, but unless a person has actually experienced it, words fail. Because, you know, I went into one exorcism of a possessed individual. It got combative, but I commanded the demonic entity inside him to, basically I wrapped it up through prayer and commands. And he sat down and his body went stiff as a board. But you know, the mouth was still going, so I was getting cussed out and all that fun stuff. And you know, told him a female dog and other things like that. You just can't describe that to a person because it's very visceral. Yeah. You know, it's very, it's like you're going toe to toe with a wild animal, and you know that thing is dangerous, especially when it's in a person. That's actually when it's the most dangerous. Because people, I tell you what, that I always do the most preparation for a possessed individual, because they can get violent, they can hurt, and the primary thing is they can hurt themselves, or that entity can hurt them while it's inside them while I'm trying to get it out, and that's always something on my mind.
Do you have you had the scenario where I get this quite a lot, where I can walk up to somebody and I always say what they bring to the table, it's like, I know there's a succubus around, I know there's an attachment around them. My guide, my team will say there's a serpent's tail. I you know, obviously I work with high level and low level because that's the way I've been trained through my Reiki masters. And sure. Again, I'm a big believer when we're doing the paranormal investigations that my guide, my team will go, it's not the main man, he's just sending his workers. And that's the way I always look at it, because obviously until you're in a full possession or a full exorcism, then that's the different, there's a different level again, isn't there? But I can walk up to somebody and my team will go, just have your doubts or your wits about your ear. I feel there's a tail wrapped around them, they're hiding it. And there's a little bit more to the aura than what you're picking up on as well. Do you get that gut intuition with that?
Oh, absolutely. You know, I went on a case down in San Francisco Bay Area. Oh, geez, it would be 4 years ago, I guess. And you know, so the report was that the wife, it was a husband and wife with a small child. The wife was being raped by this incubus, and the husband was being molested by what we would say is a succubus. But the interesting thing was, because another thing is I can get their names and their real names, not the ones they like to, they'll say, "Oh, I'm the devil, I'm Lucifer." No, you're not. Stop it.
I never ask them.
Oh, I ask their name. I'm going to talk mano y mano to them.
I'm a big believer in, for myself, I try not to build their the energy that they're working on, or try and over suppress you, or over fear you, or over succumb you. So I'll just back down a little bit. Not me generally, but I know what it's going on. I know where we're up to. It's like talk to the hand time. I'll repel you back a little bit.
Yeah. Well, see, for myself, so people have the natural fight or flight instinct when faced with, a danger, or freeze. But for me, I'm all fight. And so especially when these things are hurting people, I go in and people ask me, do I get scared? Oh yeah. Oh yeah. But the positive thing is that when I get scared, I get mad. And so when I get mad, then I just knuckle down even more. And then it's like, no, there's only one of us walking out of this room, and it's going to be me. So it's whether that's the best method, because I know other exorcists, they don't do that kind of thing. But for me, it's just who I am.
I would safely say that way is the best, because we're on this plane, aren't we? That's what I always say. We're on this plane. We've got the stronger strength.
Yeah.
Have you ever had a scenario where you see things back in the day, like I always try and explain to somebody around portals, where you can get like a time zone or a time loop or a millisecond going back, and you see what went on the land, for why it's so suppressive or negative, or that type of fear works from the land. If there's been battlefields, or there's been certain lot of blood loss and bloodshed, that it can thrive on them type of areas as well, especially when they're doing new build housing and putting new housing on places, or people are doing extensions as well. That's where I always find that things get stirred back up.
One moment, my speaker did something here. I tell you what, these things love to mess it up. It basically made you, I can barely hear you, and it shouldn't be doing that.
Okay. Do you want me to reissue the question? You want me to You okay? You're good?
Let's see.
You're right there.
All right, let me try that. Go ahead and ask the question again.
Yeah, when you're walking through the land, you can see certain battlefields, or what's gone on. Do you see milliseconds of what's gone on 1,500 years ago or 600 years ago, and understand why the land's been suppressive and it's not been settled, and if they're doing new builds on or extensions or anything like that as well. And it's hard to explain that the lie of the land can go back hundreds of years from actually what's going on now. Certain, if there's been a graveyard 500 years ago, which people are building on now with modern buildings, because everything's disintegrated underneath. And we've got a complex like that quite close to where I am, and certain people have said to me that land will turn back, even though they've tried to put a new property on it, or a new shopping estate on it, a shopping mall and stuff like that on it as well. So sometimes you're waiting for that to turn back around again, aren't you?
Yeah, so for me, one of the things that I have been doing since I run 35, and I'm 48 now. One thing that just came out of nowhere was what I call place memory. So I will, first time it happened, my wife and I were on vacation, and I was back in the 1960s, and then having a full vision of what occurred in the place, what was going on. And so, at first I thought I was having a psychotic episode or something, because it was the first time it had ever happened to me. And I'm thinking, did I hallucinate this, or what's going on here? And so I asked the people that were on the property, and they said, oh no, all that happened, and that was what happened in the 60s. And I'm like, okay, good, at least I'm not nuts. That's a bonus. You know, don't have any screws loose. And so but ever since then, I can touch objects, or if I go to a place, I'll see movies in my head of what transpired at the location or with the people. It works great actually in a therapeutic setting, you know, in mental health or substance counseling, because I can actually see what the actual core issue of the person is, and then we can address it. But the time issue, yeah, for sure.
As well, where you touched on prior with the succubus and the succubi and that, where somebody was being raped, and I've had a case where here we go again. I'll just wait. I'll just wait for Bishop Cloud to come back in there, and then I'll put the question over again. But obviously, it's every time. I just be with you now. There we go. Every time we touch on this, when I'll do the recap, and we'll just send out loads of love and white light in both rooms where we are, where you've had succubus and succubi's trying to over suppress themselves on somebody and like raping them. I've had a case and scenario where a person has virtually walked around for about a long time with like a phantom pregnancy as well, and I've had to help deal with that scenario as well, which is, it's quite personal in and around the male talking to a female that was going on as well. And I think there's a divine line of, you do need a female with you as well. Do you find there's any scenarios where you've had to bring females within your team to help you?
Yeah, definitely. You know, my wife goes with me a lot of times. But if she can't, I use my therapeutic tools to talk with people in a very non-offensive, very meek way, so that, because people, you know, you got to understand, these people that are experiencing this stuff are experiencing trauma. I mean, these are traumatic, life-changing, sometimes, you know, paradigm shifting things. And so you have to approach it, whether it's sexual abuse in the past with a woman, and so it's best if maybe a woman speaks with that person or whatnot. But you know, I'm not a small guy. I'm 6'2" and about 300 pounds. So, you know, I'm more like the Bigfoot, or, you know, this big banshee. And so a lot of times what I'll do is I purposely shrink myself, you know, shrink my shoulders down. I use body posturing and whatnot to show, hey, I'm not the threat. I'm not here to browbeat you or anything else, and I'm certainly not your abuser. So, you know, if I don't have a female in those situations, I use body posturing and tone of voice and just therapeutic tools I've learned to use.
Trying to keep professional down the middle, isn't it, as well? But you've got to touch on certain questions as well sometimes. Absolutely. And again, I've obviously some notes from like last week's show and all that we're touching on now. It's like I always say that I've had a case where somebody's had a succubus in and around them, and the person keeps inviting it back in. So you've balanced and cleansed it, and when you're doing follow-up catch-ups and seeing how they are a few weeks or months down the line, and it's like, oh no, they keep inviting it back in. But to explain to them that these energies and entities can lead towards certain mental health issues as well, that especially when there's children around. Sure. As you say, you are like a counsellor, aren't you? You're a detective, a counsellor. You work with the church. You're trying to cover the whole vastness of what we're trying to help with and move forwards with. But I think when you hit home with somebody and say, stop attracting it back in, it can affect your mental health. You know, there's a fine line, isn't there? There's a big balance where you go in, please shake it off, don't invite it in.
Yeah. And, you know, that's one of the first things I tell people is, you're most likely going to have to change some things about your life in order to keep these things out. And I've actually declined to do possession cases or haunting cases if the people on the property or that person that's seeking the exorcism won't change their life. It's like they want to play with the darkness and expect it not to bite back. And so, from the Christian perspective, if I was to cast out, say, from a possessed person, one demon, 7 others will come back worse than the first to possess that person. So I usually tell them, hey, you know what? I'm not going to do this if you're not going to shape up, change up some of the things you're doing. Not that you have to be perfect by any means, but what you're doing to open these doors and portals, y'all need to stop.
So again, from even paranormal investigators, and they've got to be careful, and they've got to sage the house. They've got to do that. I always say to people, you've got to do your own little bit as well, of like not attracting attachments, not attracting any possessions, and looking for signs, really caring for each other, really a lot of teamwork as well. And when somebody's had a possession or I was obviously certain an exorcism, that it's nice sometimes when you get the feedback or you get a phone call a year later and gone, where people's lives and paths have really got back on track, or they're saying, I'm doing really well, I'm married now, or, and totally seeing that. And sometimes just to get a thank you out the blue, it's just like, you can't buy that. And it's not what we're after, but again, it's like, it helps us, give us that upliftment as well, doesn't it?
It does. And a lot of the folks I've helped in the past, they become my friends, after the fact. And I have no problem talking with them and chatting with them, seeing how their life is going. And 90% of the time, everything's, they're living a normal, healthy life. So that's the beauty of it.
David's just put a question up there. We're all guilty sometimes, guys, of basically really known how to protect ourselves properly, and then sometimes some people can get affected, and I always safely say that they can be overtired and then have that experience of an attachment or a little bit of possession trying to shake itself around them, and use them as the battery pack as well. And again, it's all about helping and understanding in them situations.
Yeah, absolutely. You definitely have, the best way to protect yourself, I always tell folks, because, I'm a bishop too, pray up, be as spiritually charged as you can, get involved in your spiritual life. That's your biggest investment that you can do to be protected. It's when we, forget about the spiritual life that these things are like, oh, there's an opening now. They're kind of weak. I think I'll go ahead and get them, or get them again. And so, vigilance is key.
Are you a routinist? Are you superstitious towards anything? I myself, when I go and invest, I like to carry a little bit of silver in my pocket. I don't mean money. I like to carry like the 5-pointed star, and I always carry grounding stones in my pocket, just red jasper. I like to be grounded, where I went through a period about a year or two back where I would wear cheap watches for the scenario I do in my day job, where the watches would just keep pinging off, where spirits to me were trying to get the metal off me. And I always found that they wanted metal away from me for about a year and a half. And are you superstitious with anything, or do you carry little trinkets or anything that with you in your pocket as well?
I don't carry trinkets per se, but I always have my crucifix, and I always have my holy water.
Well, I had a situation the other week where I got a lift down to an investigation, and I actually had my holy water. I always keep it in my van. I've got a travel van, and I always keep it there. So I felt I was a little bit unguarded where I needed it. And then obviously it was like 100 miles away. So sometimes as well, that's why I usually like to go in my own vehicle, even though it's nice getting a lift. It's like sometimes when you haven't got your tools on you, basically, then that's the time that a lot of work well, certain energies come in and say, been watching, I was, waiting for this to come along, where you have to ground the person then and balance and cleanse them as well. So again, and get the attachment to step out from giving its story or what that was going through at the time and the period with spirits as well. And sometimes spirits don't sometimes know where they're up to on the plane, and they can be virtually trapped within the atmosphere, and they don't understand what you're actually saying to them as a medium. And again, it's just keep pushing the white light, keep pushing the prayers, keep pushing the balancing and the cleansing as well. And it is a battle, isn't it?
Oh yeah, it's a definite battle. There's no two ways about it. And for me, I always make sure I have my exorcism kit when I'm going out and whatnot. Not that I think a spirit is going to be driven off by a scent of a certain incense or whatnot, but incense has always represented the prayers of the people, the crucifix, Christ taking victory over the darkness. Those things, I kind of feel naked when I don't have those things.
Yeah.
And it's not so much the superstitious piece of it, it's the it's like going to warfare and you forget your sword kind of thing.
Have you had the scenario where that you've actually done the exorcism or the possession, and you've helped somebody get this energy and entity to step back? Have you actually, then do you see it physically sometimes stepping away and going out the room, or has it been taken out the room by I always say, like Archangel Michael? Do you see any angels come in the room sometimes? And I've experienced where somebody's soul come out the back, and they were due to pass within a week or two, when I was with another Reiki master, and trying to explain that we're seeing that, and somebody's just in the pub having a pint, and you're like, that spirit and soul's energy is waiting to move on and look for a new capsule, or look for a new youngster to be in and around a female that's pregnant. And to explain, when you're seeing that shift and you can feel the calmness come into that room, it's like, it is a big relief as well, isn't it? Have you experienced where you've seen that actually coming out of the person?
Oh, absolutely. Not only out of the person, but off the properties. I was called to a case about 5 years ago, I guess it was. They were having typical haunting type stuff. Their names are being called, they're being touched and all that stuff. And so I had the homeowner and her friends stay out of the house while me and a couple others went in there and did what we needed to do. And once we were done, we came out, and the homeowner said, "You're not going to believe this, but we saw all of these black shadows jumping out the windows and running out the doors." She said one even ran down the street when you guys were doing your thing. And I was like, well, that's pretty cool. I saw them a brief rush, but I didn't see them all leaving or anything like that. They did. And so that was actually really cool that they got to see it in action, and their freedom and their ownership of that property again being fully transferred back to them. So,
and also as well, would you say there's certain steps towards somebody getting a possession, an attachment to possession, exorcism, and then I find there's like 4 or 5 different levels of where you go face to face with the person that's got the attachment or the possession or the exorcism needs doing, and then you get that challenging side of it, don't you? And then you get the real clash, and then you get your energies and everything building above it, and then you get the breaking point as well, which a lot of people don't see that. But even when we meet people, you can have that connection. When people connect, they connect, but when they repel, they repel. But I'd definitely say there's like 5 or 6 little stages where you're in that scenario of in and around that somebody needs our help. Even if it's on an investigation, in that room that someone stood in that corner of a lowered energy that's waiting to do whatever they're going to do and affect a member of the public or a member of the team, or try and suppress them as well. So you do get used to them levels of the 1 or 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6 stages, don't you?
Oh yeah, absolutely. You begin, once you've done it enough, you learn to recognize patterns, and that's really what it is to recognize the patterns that go with a lot of these things, and to be able to interdict in those patterns to shift them a different way, whether that's if it's a team member and they're coming in with a heaviness on them or something, for whatever reason, and just saying, hey, why don't you go ahead and step out of the room or whatnot. For me, I make it very light, very non-condemning. I'm just like, just go ahead and step on out. Might not be the best plan for you, because and another reason why I do it is because sometimes those things can jump into them.
Also, as well, where even on investigations where you've got an energy or an entity in certain corners that it's going to try and affect somebody as well. And as you said, it's not about a weaker person. It's somebody that can be just vulnerable with a thought of them breaking their own connection of the concentration. And then bang, there you go, have a bit of that. And it can leave it, like I always say, it can leave a calling card and wipe it off your feet or brush past you and really stumble you over or knock you past as well. And I've had scenarios where I've gone to a hotel, and as soon as I've got out the car, I've got nose to nose, and the spirit's energies that's dominant on the land will be going, what are you doing here? What's this all about? And then I'll introduce myself as well. So I always try and be professional and say, okay, I'm not here to harm you. I'm here to work with you. If you want to give me some more energies and give me some more communication, but I'm an open person, but I don't like it when they try and be more suppressive and come in all guns ho. I always try, come back prior to the strength you've had. Talk to me on an even keel and an even level. Again, that's the way I like to work. So when something's not right in a room, don't you?
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of times, so when I go out, I can usually tell the difference between a human haunt and an inhuman or a demonic haunt. And because the feelings are different, and for the human haunts, I basically talk to them, pray for them. And then as a bishop, I give them absolution. And typically with a human haunt, the absolution piece is the key, and then they're gone. It's the inhuman, darker ones that, love that oppressive feeling, like you were saying, and whatnot.
And again, sometimes, you can have people that can have really negative thoughts, and you keep throwing all the positivity towards them as well. And again, when you've done the expulsion and stuff like that, you do feel a sigh of relief that, you need that break in the window, don't you? You do need time out. And as you say, you can be floored for 3 days. Even when you're doing an investigation to recharge, I always find me Monday to Friday, I always try and recharge from a weekend if I'm out and about, or even... Right, we will just get him back. I know we're on for an hour there, but I'm sure he'll pop back in as well. But it's certainly definitely been going off with the internet as well, which is it will affect it doesn't want you talking about certain scenarios and situations as well. So he's back in the room again, and we're just saying there, it certainly doesn't want you talking about the topics, the subjects where you're both on the same wavelength of, what you're talking about, what you're doing, where you're up to, you've got the professionalism to do what you do. I know we're just coming up to an hour and 5 minutes now, so I will wrap it up again basically in a minute or two. Have you ever come across where it seems an energy or an entity will come along like every 5 years or 3 years, and it's like, I've come back again, I'm back to see you, but keeping you on your toes, I always saying, right? Just like, sometimes you can have a group of 2 or 3 that's in the same pocket and field, or the same, they work together. So when one comes along, the other 2 are going to come along in a week or 2.
Sure, absolutely. They always circle back. That's one of the things, and that's one of the things I tell folks too when I help them out. You have to be vigilant, because these things, once they have your scent, they will always circle back to see if there's an opening to get back into your life. And if there is, they'll be back. But if you're vigilant, they won't be. They won't have the opening.
I've seen scenarios where people have been doing a normal paranormal show and on TV, and they've been affected in the States, but I know it's popping up in the UK within a few weeks or two, or a few days or two. That it's not like a portal just between America and UK. You just know it's going to pop up in a certain country. And that, do you find any countries are struggling like Mexico or Egypt or anywhere? Do you find there's a lot more going on in the current situation around the globe?
South America is pretty big, having a lot of issues. But I know the UK is as well. Also, some places in Africa are having quite a bit. But the funny thing is, in those same areas, they're also having really good things happen. So it's like these things are trying to, get in the way of what's going on and sowing more chaos and discord and animosity,
So as again, where we touched on at the start of the show, that you've done a lot of podcasts, you've done a lot of things as well. And do you want to touch on how you've done with like Ghost Adventures, and what was that like? Which episode was that, so people can tune in and watch that? And because everyone seems to love that over in the UK.
Sure. No, for Ghost Adventures, the episode is called Golden Ghost Town, and we went to a place that we've known was haunted when I lived in Oregon, and I would take folks there to test them out, to see if they would be a good fit for the team, to see what they thought, what they felt, etc. And for Ghost Adventures, they had called me up out of the blue and asked me if I knew any haunted places. I said, "Oh yeah, I know quite a few."
Come with us.
Yeah, and so I pointed them to Golden as well as the Wolf Creek Inn. And so they did both of those places, and I was on the Golden Ghost Town episode. And that was great. Aaron and I talked for, 30 minutes or so, just about family and life and stuff, while everyone was setting things up and whatnot. Then I was on It Feels Evil on the Travel Channel. Good friend of mine, Tim, he was the main guy on there. And, great experience. It helped him out from what he needed. And then I was on In Search of Monsters on the Travel Channel. That one was the New Jersey Devil episode. They flew me out to New Jersey, and I went to see if I could find the Jersey Devil. And also visited the witches well out there and whatnot. And that was a big experience too. Didn't find the Jersey Devil, but I found the witch, quote unquote. It was just a human spirit that had been killed, and she was asking for help. And so I gave her absolution, and she was gone,
Have you ever come across we have one here every now and again. It's like Spring Jack, I think it's called, Jumping Spring Jack. It just seems to be, you log onto it, you clock it, and then all of a sudden as you turn, it seems to be going over a fence or a boundary, and you're like, you clock onto so many energies and entities, then you're like, oh, I know what that is.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I had a case recently. It was up in Portland, Oregon, and it was a Wendigo haunting. Wendigo, Native American spirits, poltergeist activity. It was pretty crazy, and you'd see these things shoot all around, and you're like, oh, okay, I know what you are. Oh, I know what you are.
Have you done any Sasquatch hunting? Have you been looking for Bigfoot? Have you ever been asked to do anything like that, or what your thoughts or take are with that type of scenario?
Well, I would love to go squatching, as they call it, but I've never been, and I do think Bigfoot exists. I think it's an ape of some sort, but heck, we didn't even know silverback gorillas existed till, what was it, 1920 or 30? So, it could just be a very elusive ape for all I know.
Right, it's certainly been a pleasure. I won't keep it any longer because I know you're early on in the afternoon there, aren't you? There's what's about 3, 4 o'clock over there, is it?
Yeah, it's 10 after 4.
Right, okay. And again, it's been a pleasure, and I just love talking to like-minded people. Where have you got any books? Have you done any books yet?
Yeah, I actually have a book on Amazon. It's called Walking with Ghosts, an Exorcist memoir of the paranormal. And in that book, it actually started just as more of a family diary and a personal diary of what's happened with our family, what I've been through, details some of the UFO stuff I've been with, family experiences. My mom has a whole chapter where she talks about her experiences in there and growing up in a haunted Victorian home. And yeah, good little read, I've been told.
I think my nan, she's a very one for keeping other energies and entities. She's always seems to be telling them off, my nan. So, you know, I love my little team. I love my little family, spiritual family there as well. So it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you, and your experience and knowledge it's just been a vast of information, and I've loved every minute of it. So again, I'm going to thank you for that. If you stay in the backstage, then I'll have a little quick catch up before you go. And it's just been an absolute pleasure. And it really has added on from last week's show. It's tied in for people where they can backtrack on last week's show and talk about what we've talked about. And it really does put the perspective into play, what we come across and what we do. And to me, I'm a helper, I'm a healer. That's how I see myself, and try and help and support people. And the counselling side of it, it all does come in with the balance, isn't it?
It is, you know, because people need that counseling piece too. Like I said, you know, they've been through traumatic experiences and they need that support. So it's important.
Right. Thanks for your time, young man. It's been an absolute pleasure, Bishop. And if you just stay backstage, and I'll catch up with you in a minute or two.
Sounds great.
Right. Thank you for, wow, what an hour and 15 minutes nearly. But again, just please just keep helping and supporting people out there when you're going out and about, and you're on your investigations, and always look after each other as well. If there's people in help, or you need people needing help, or people needing support, don't be afraid to ask, because, excuse me, that's the most important part, where, you know, we're all light workers basically, and we're all trying to be here for people, help and support as well. So don't be afraid to ask. We had a gentleman on last week that was so happy that he could put his questions over around this topic and subject. Again, it's all about, when you've asked the question, there's people there to help. If I can't help, there's people around the globe that will help as well, and that's what it's all about. So I would safely say, stay safe, stay strong, keep moving forwards, keep putting the positivity out there, folks. And it's been an absolute pleasure for you tuning in tonight. So I will hopefully catch up with you either Monday night or next Thursday. So stay tuned, and I'll see you soon.